Hi, and welcome to English-Fabule. Are you learning English? Great. Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started.
Imagine a young boy sitting on a beach in Hawaii, wondering who he really is. He has a mother from Kansas, a father from Kenya, and grandparents who raise him with love. He feels different, but also special. Who would have thought that this boy, feeling small and unsure, would one day become the President of the United States? How did he go from feeling like he didn't fit in to leading a country and inspiring millions? This is the story of Barack Obama's journey, from a boy with big dreams to a leader who changed the world. Barack Obama showed that no dream is too big if you work hard enough. A boy in Hawaii. Barack Obama was born in a sunny place called Honolulu in Hawaii. Hawaii is a group of islands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It is part of the United States, but it's far away from the mainland. He was born on the 4th of August, 1961. This makes him special because he is the only president of the United States who was born outside of the 48 main states. His full name is Barack Hussein Obama II. People often call him Barack Obama. His first name, Barack, means blessing in Swahili, a language from Africa. Barack's mother was from America, and his father was from Kenya, a country in Africa. His mother's name was Ann Dunham. She was only 18 years old when Barack was born. She came from Kansas, a state in the middle of America. Her family had roots in England, Ireland, Germany, and other European countries. Some people found out later that her family might even have connections to a man who was one of the first African slaves in America a long time ago. Barack's father was Barack Obama Sr. He was 27 years old when Barack was born. He came from a village in Kenya. His last name, Obama, came from his family's tribe in Kenya called Luo. Barack's parents met at a university in Hawaii. They were in a class learning Russian. His father was a student from Kenya, studying in America with a scholarship. His mother was an American student. They got married in Hawaii in February 1961. 6 months later, Barack was born. Just a few weeks after Barack's birth, his mother and baby Barack moved to Seattle, another city in America. They lived there for about a year. During that time, his father finished his studies in Hawaii. Then he went to a famous university called Harvard to study economics more. Barack's parents' marriage did not last. They got divorced when Barack was only 2 years old, in 1964. Barack's father went back to Kenya. He worked for the government there. He visited Barack in Hawaii only one time, when Barack was 10 years old, at Christmas. Sadly, Barack Obama Sr. died in a car accident in Kenya when Barack was 21. Growing up, Barack's family was different from many families around him in Hawaii. His father was black and his mother was white. He said that when he was very young, he didn't really think about it much. His father just looked different from the other people he knew. His father was black as pitch, and his mother was white as milk, as he described it later. But as he grew older, he started to notice that people saw him as different. He thought a lot about what it meant to be mixed race. He tried to understand how people in society saw him. This was sometimes confusing for him when he was young. In 1963, Barack's mother met a man from Indonesia named Lolo Soetoro at the university. Indonesia is a country in Asia, far away from America. They got married in 1965. Lolo went back to Indonesia in 1966 after his studies. A little later, in 1967, Barack and his mother followed him to Indonesia. At first, they lived in a simple neighborhood in Jakarta, the capital city of Indonesia. Later, they moved to a richer part of the city. Barack was still a young boy, learning about a whole new world. His early years in Hawaii and then Indonesia shaped who he would become. He was growing up in a diverse family and experiencing different cultures from a young age. This would become very important in his life later on. Chapter 2. Indonesia and America. Hawaii was Barack's first home. He knew the warm sun, the blue ocean, and the friendly faces. But when Barack was 6 years old, things changed. His mother, Anne, had met a man named Lolo Soetoro at the university. Lolo was from Indonesia, a country far away across the big ocean. Anne and Lolo got married. Soon, it was time for a big move. Barack and his mother were going to Indonesia to live with Lolo. Indonesia was very different from Hawaii. It was a new country, with a new language, new food, and new customs. When they arrived in Jakarta, the capital city of Indonesia, everything felt strange. The air was hot and humid. There were many people, and the streets were busy and noisy. They lived in a small house in a neighborhood called Menteng Dalam. It was not like the quiet streets of Honolulu. Everything was new and exciting, but also a little bit scary for a young boy. One of the biggest changes was school. In Indonesia, Barack had to go to a local school where everyone spoke Indonesian. He went to a Catholic school called Santo Franciscus Assisi. The classes were in Indonesian, and he didn't understand much at first. It was hard to learn new things in a language he didn't know. His name was even changed at school to Barry Soetoro, his stepfather's last name. After 2 years at the Catholic school, he changed to a public school called Sekolah Dasar Negeri Menteng 01. This school was also in Indonesian. Learning in a different language was difficult, but Barack was a smart boy. He started to pick up Indonesian words and phrases. He listened carefully in class and tried his best to understand. Besides the local schools, Barack's mother also helped him with his studies at home. She used books from America called Calvert school books. These books were in English, and she taught him reading, writing, and other subjects in English. His mother was a good teacher. She wanted Barack to learn about the world and think for himself. Slowly, Barack started to learn Indonesian. He learned to talk to his friends, his teachers, and people in the neighborhood. He even learned to speak Indonesian fluently, like a native speaker. He could play with other children and understand their games and jokes. Indonesia became a second home for him. His stepfather, Lolo, also taught him important things. Lolo was a strong and practical man. He showed Barack how to be tough and not give up easily. He gave Barack advice about how the world really worked, not just how people wished it worked. Lolo taught him to be resilient, to be strong when things were difficult. After 4 years in Indonesia, when Barack was 10 years old, it was time for another change. His mother decided that Barack should go back to Honolulu to live with his grandparents again. She felt it was important for him to have the best education possible. So Barack said goodbye to Indonesia, to his friends, and to his stepfather. It was sad to leave a place where he had lived for so long and learned so much. Returning to Hawaii was like coming back to a familiar place, but it was also different. He was older now, and he had seen a different part of the world. He went back to living with his grandparents, Madeline and Stanley Dunham. They were happy to have him back. His grandfather was quiet and strong, and his grandmother was kind and smart. Barack went to Punahou School again, the same school he had attended before Indonesia. It was a private school, and he got a scholarship to help pay for it. Being back in Hawaii, speaking English all the time, and being with his grandparents again, felt comfortable. But Indonesia had changed him. He had seen a different culture, learned a new language, and become more independent. These years in Indonesia were a big part of his life, shaping him in ways he would only understand later. Moving between Indonesia and America taught him that the world was a big place, full of different people and different ways of life. And he was a part of many worlds now, not just one. Chapter 3. Learning in School. When Barack was 10 years old, he came back to Hawaii. He lived with his grandparents again. He started going to a new school called Punahou School. It was a big, private school. It was different from the schools he went to in Indonesia. Punahou School was a good school. Barack was a good student. He learned many things there. He studied hard subjects like math and science. He also learned about history and English. The teachers were good, and they helped him learn. School was not just about books. Barack made friends at Punahou. He spent time with his friends after school and on weekends. They talked, played games, and had fun. Some of his friends called him Barry. He used this nickname then. Barack liked sports. He played basketball at Punahou. He was good at basketball. He was on the school team. He practiced a lot. He liked being part of a team. Basketball was a way to make friends and have fun. It also taught him about working hard to get better at something. Hawaii was a special place. It had many different kinds of people. There were people from America, Japan, China, and other countries. Barack learned about different cultures at Punahou and in Hawaii. He saw people from different backgrounds living together. This was important for him. He learned to respect different people and different ideas. But even in Hawaii, Barack felt different sometimes. His father was from Kenya, in Africa, and his mother was white American. Most people in Hawaii were not like him. He was black, but his mother was white. He thought about this a lot. He wondered about his identity. Who was he? Where did he belong? These questions started to be important when he was a teenager. Teenagers often think about who they are and what they want to be. For Barack, it was also about race and where he came from. He started to think more about his father, who lived in Kenya. He did not know his father very well. His father had visited him once when he was a child, but Barack did not really remember him. He knew his father was black and from Africa. This made him think more about being black in America. Sometimes, Barack felt confused. He was growing up in Hawaii, but he was not like everyone else. He was American, but he also had roots in Africa. He was white and black. It was not always easy to understand who he was. He talked to his friends sometimes about these feelings. He also started to read books and think more about the world. He was becoming more interested in big questions. Questions about race, about identity, about fairness, and about the world around him. During his teenage years, Barack also made some mistakes. Like many teenagers, he tried new things. He started to drink alcohol and smoke marijuana. He even tried cocaine. He said he did this because he was trying to forget his questions about who he was. He wanted to push these questions out of his mind. He was part of a group of friends who smoked marijuana. They called themselves the Choom Gang. Choom was a slang word for smoking marijuana. This was a time when he was trying to figure things out and sometimes making bad choices. Even though he made mistakes, Barack was still a good student. He was smart and he worked hard in school. Punahou School gave him a good education. It also gave him the chance to experience different cultures. He learned to respect people who were different from him. This was a very important lesson he learned in Hawaii and at Punahou School. It helped him see the world in a wider way. It became part of his values, things he thought were very important in life. His time in school was a time of learning, not just from books, but also about himself and the world around him. Chapter 4. College in New York. After high school in Hawaii, Barack wanted to learn more about the world. He decided to go to college. He got a scholarship, which is money to help pay for school, to go to Occidental College. Occidental was in Los Angeles, California. It was a new place for Barack, very different from Hawaii. At Occidental, Barack started to become more interested in politics. He studied different subjects, but he liked political science the most. Political science is about how governments work and how people live together in societies. In his first year at college, Barack did something brave. He made his first public speech. It was about South Africa. At that time, South Africa had a system called apartheid. Apartheid was very unfair. It separated people by their skin color. Black people in South Africa did not have the same rights as white people. Barack spoke up and asked his college to stop supporting companies that did business with South Africa because of apartheid. This showed that Barack was starting to care a lot about fairness and justice in the world. During his time in Occidental, Barack also traveled. He went to Indonesia to visit his mother and half-sister, Maya. It was good for him to see his family again and to remember his life in Indonesia. He also traveled to Pakistan for 3 weeks to visit friends from college and their families. Traveling to different countries helped Barack understand different cultures and ways of life. After 2 years at Occidental, Barack wanted a change. He decided to move to New York City and go to Columbia University. New York City was a very big and exciting city, very different from Los Angeles and Hawaii. Columbia University was a famous university in the city. At Columbia, Barack continued to study political science. He also decided to study English literature. This meant he read a lot of books and learned about writing and stories. He lived in an apartment near the university. It was off campus, so he was more independent. College in New York was a time of learning and growing for Barack. He studied hard and got good grades. In 1983, he finished Columbia University with a Bachelor of Arts degree. This was a big achievement. He had learned a lot about politics, history, and the world. He was becoming a well-educated young man. After college, Barack started to work. His first job was at a company called Business International Corporation. He worked there for about a year as a financial researcher and writer. This job was about money and business. Then, he got another job as a project coordinator for the New York Public Interest Research Group. This group worked to help people and make life better in New York City. These first jobs were important for Barack. They gave him experience in the working world. But he was still thinking about how he could help people in a bigger way. His time in college, especially at Columbia in New York, had opened his mind to many new ideas and possibilities. He was starting to think more and more about a life of service and helping others, ideas that would shape his future path. College in New York was a big step in his journey to becoming the person he was meant to be. Chapter 5. Helping People in Chicago. After living in big cities and studying hard, Barack wanted to do something different. He felt he needed to help people directly. So, after Columbia University, he moved to a new city, Chicago. Chicago was in the middle of America, in the state of Illinois. It was a big city, with tall buildings and busy streets. But in some parts of Chicago, life was not easy. Some neighborhoods were poor, and people had problems finding jobs and good homes. Barack got a job as a community organizer. This job was with a group called the Developing Communities Project, or DCP. It was a group started by churches to help the neighborhoods in the south part of Chicago. These neighborhoods were called Roseland, West Pullman, and Riverdale. They were places where many African American families lived. Being a community organizer was about talking to people, listening to their problems, and helping them work together to make things better. Barack started in June 1985. He was young, just out of college, but he was full of energy and ideas. His office was not a fancy place. It was a small room, but for Barack, it was a place to start making a difference. He spent his days walking around the neighborhoods, meeting people in churches, in their homes, and on the streets. He wanted to know what they needed. He listened to their stories about unemployment, about schools that were not good, and about houses that needed repair. One of the first things Barack helped with was jobs. Many people in these neighborhoods could not find work. Barack and the DCP worked to create job training programs. They helped people learn new skills so they could get better jobs. He helped set up a program to train people for work. This was important because a job meant money, and money meant families could live better. Another important project was about education. Barack knew that education was the key to a better future. He helped start a college preparation program. This program was for young people who wanted to go to college. It helped them study, learn, and get ready for university. He wanted young people in these neighborhoods the chance to go to college, just like he did. Housing was also a big issue. In some areas, people lived in apartment buildings that were old and not well taken care of. These buildings were called Altgeld Gardens. Barack worked with the people living there to start a tenants' rights organization. This group helped people understand their rights as renters. They worked together to ask for better conditions in their buildings, for repairs, and for fair treatment. Being a community organizer was not always easy. It took a lot of time and patience. Sometimes things moved slowly. There were meetings and more meetings. There were disagreements and challenges. But Barack was persistent. He believed in the people he was working with, and he believed they could make their communities stronger. He learned a lot from this work. He learned about the real problems people faced every day. He learned about poverty, about inequality, and about the importance of community. He also learned about himself. He realized he was good at bringing people together, at listening, and at helping them find solutions. Barack worked with the Developing Communities Project for 3 years, until May 1988. It was not a job that made him rich or famous, but it was a job that was important. It was a job that helped people. It was a job that showed him the power of working together for change. This experience in Chicago was very important for Barack. It shaped his ideas and his future. It made him want to do even more to help people and to make the world a fairer place. After Chicago, he knew he wanted to continue on a path of service and leadership. He felt that he could use his skills and his experiences to make a bigger impact, maybe even in politics. His time in Chicago was like a training ground, preparing him for the bigger challenges and opportunities that lay ahead. Chapter 6. Harvard Law School. After working in Chicago, Barack thought about his future. He wanted to do more, to help more people. He knew that to make bigger changes, he needed to learn more. So, he decided to go back to school. He chose Harvard Law School. Harvard was a very famous university. It was known for being one of the best law schools in the country. In the fall of 1988, Barack moved to a new city, Somerville, near Boston, where Harvard was located. It was different from Chicago. The buildings were old, and the weather was colder in the winter. He found a small apartment and started his classes. Law school was very hard work. There was a lot of reading and studying. The classes were about laws and how they worked. Barack learned about different kinds of law, like laws about people's rights and laws about business. He studied with many smart students. They talked about big ideas and argued about what was right and wrong. At the end of his first year, something special happened. Barack was chosen to be an editor of the Harvard Law Review. This was a very important student magazine about law. Only the best students could be editors. It meant that people at Harvard thought Barack was a very good law student. But it got even better. In his second year, Barack's classmates chose him to be the president of the Harvard Law Review. This was a big surprise and a very important moment. No black student had ever been president of the Harvard Law Review before. It was history. News about Barack became big. Newspapers and television stations talked about him. People were interested in this young black man who was leading the Harvard Law Review. They wanted to know who he was and what he believed. Being president of the Law Review was a lot of extra work. Barack had to lead meetings, decide what articles to publish, and make sure everything was done well. He worked very hard, but he also learned a lot. He learned how to lead people and how to make important decisions. During his time at Harvard, Barack also worked with a famous professor, Lawrence Tribe. He was a research assistant for Professor Tribe. This meant he helped the professor with his work and learned from him directly. Professor Tribe was an expert in the Constitution, the basic rules of the USA. Working with him was a great chance to learn more about American law. In the summers, when school was out, Barack went back to Chicago. He worked at law firms. These were big companies where many lawyers worked. He was a summer associate. He learned about working in a real law office. He saw how lawyers helped big companies and businesses. It was different from his work as a community organizer, but it was also a good experience to see different parts of the law world. Because of all the attention he got as president of the Harvard Law Review, Barack had a new opportunity. A book publisher asked him to write a book. They gave him money in advance to write it. The book was supposed to be about race relations in America. But as Barack wrote, it became something more personal. It became a story about his own life, about his father, and about finding his identity. This book would later become Dreams from My Father. In 1991, after 3 years of hard work, Barack finished Harvard Law School. He graduated with honors. This means he got very good grades. It was called magna cum laude, which is Latin for with great praise. It showed how much he had learned and how well he had done at one of the toughest schools in the world. Harvard Law School was a big challenge, but Barack did very well. He proved to himself and to others that he was smart, hardworking, and a leader. He left Harvard not just with a law degree, but with new skills, new confidence, and a bigger platform to make a difference. His time there was important for his future, and it opened doors to new possibilities. Chapter 7. Becoming a Lawyer and Teacher. After Harvard Law School, Barack Obama had a big decision. He had done very well in school. Many big law firms wanted him to work for them. These firms made a lot of money. But Barack wanted to do something different. He wanted to use his law skills to help people, not just companies. So, in 1991, Barack went back to Chicago. He took a job at the University of Chicago Law School. It was a special job called Visiting Law and Government Fellow. This meant he could spend 2 years there. What did he do? He started to write his first book. This book would later become famous. It was called Dreams from My Father. After 2 years as a fellow, the law school asked Barack to stay. They wanted him to teach. From 1992, he became a lecturer. Later, he became a senior lecturer. He taught constitutional law. This is a very important type of law. It is about the rules of the government and the rights of people. Teaching law was good for Barack. He liked being in a university. He could think and talk about important ideas. He was a good teacher. Students liked his classes. He made law interesting and easy to understand. He taught at the University of Chicago Law School for 12 years. It was a long time. But teaching was not the only thing Barack did. He also wanted to be active in the community. In 1992, he took on a new project. It was called Project Vote. Illinois was a state with many people who could vote, but they were not signed up. Many of these people were African Americans. Project Vote wanted to help them register to vote. Barack became the director of Project Vote in Illinois. He had a small team of people working with him. They also had many volunteers, about 700. They worked hard for several months. They went to neighborhoods, talked to people, and helped them fill out the forms to register. Project Vote was very successful. They registered over 150,000 people to vote. This was a big achievement. It meant more people could have their voices heard in elections. Because of this work, people started to notice Barack Obama. A business magazine in Chicago called Crane's Chicago Business put him on a list. The list was 40 under 40. It meant the 40 most important people under 40 years old in Chicago. Barack was on this list in 1993. While Barack was teaching and working with Project Vote, he was also involved with other groups. He served on the boards of directors of some organizations. These were groups that helped people and communities. One was called the Woods Fund of Chicago. It helped poor communities. Another was the Joyce Foundation. It worked on many issues like education and the environment. He was also involved with the Chicago Annenberg Challenge. This group helped to improve schools in Chicago. For this group, he was even the president and chairman for some years. Barack was using his law degree and his skills in many ways. He was a teacher, a community organizer, and a leader in different groups. He was working hard to make a difference. Even though he was a lawyer, he was not just working in a law office. He was using his law skills to help people and make his community better. Later, when he went into politics, all of these experiences would be very important. But at this time, he was becoming known as a lawyer and a teacher who cared about his city and its people. It is interesting to note that even though Barack was a lawyer, his law license later became inactive in 2007. This was after he had become a U.S. Senator and was thinking about running for president. It shows that his career was changing. He was moving from being a lawyer to being a politician. But his early years as a lawyer and teacher were very important in shaping who he became and the path he would take. Chapter 8. Senator in Illinois. After teaching law and working in the community, Barack wanted to do more. He thought about how he could help more people. He decided to try politics. He wanted to be a senator in Illinois, the state where he lived. In 1996, there was an election for the Illinois State Senate. A state senator is like a leader for a part of Illinois. They make laws for the state. Barack decided to run for senator in the 13th district. This district was in the south side of Chicago. It was the area he knew well. To become a senator, he had to win the election. He talked to people in his community. He told them why he wanted to be a senator. He wanted to make things better for people in Illinois. He talked about important things like good schools and health care. People listened to him. They liked his ideas. Barack worked hard to win the election. He went door to door to meet people. He spoke at community meetings. He asked people for their votes. In the end, he won. In 1997, Barack Obama became a senator in Illinois. As a senator, Barack worked with people from both parties, Democrats and Republicans. He wanted to make good laws that everyone could agree on. He worked on laws to make government more honest. These laws were about ethics. He also worked on health care laws. He wanted to help people get better health care. One important law he helped pass gave more tax credits to people with low incomes. Tax credits are like getting money back from the government. This helped people who didn't earn much money. He also worked on welfare reform. Welfare is help for people who need money. He wanted to make the welfare system better and help people find jobs. He also supported help for child care. He knew it was important for families to have good child care. People in Illinois liked Barack as a senator. They saw that he worked hard and cared about them. In 1998, there was another election. Barack ran for senator again. He won again. And then again in 2002, he was re-elected as senator. In 2003, something important happened in the Illinois Senate. The Democrats, Barack's party, became the majority. This meant they had more power in the Senate. Barack became the chairman of an important committee. This committee was called the Health and Human Services Committee. This committee was about health and help for people. As chairman, Barack helped pass more laws. One important law was about racial profiling. Racial profiling is when police stop people because of their race or skin color. Barack made a law that said police had to record the race of drivers they stopped. This helped to watch if police were stopping people unfairly because of their race. He also worked on laws about the death penalty. The death penalty is when someone is killed as punishment for a crime. Barack made a law that said police had to video record interrogations in homicide cases. Homicide is when someone is killed. This helped to make sure that people were not forced to confess to crimes they didn't do. Police groups said that Barack worked well with them to make these changes. Barack was a senator in Illinois for many years, from 1997 to 2004. He learned a lot in this job. He learned how to make laws. He learned how to work with different people. He learned how to help people in his state. Being a senator in Illinois was a very important step for Barack. It helped him to get ready for even bigger things in the future. He was becoming a leader, and people were starting to see it. Chapter 9. Going to Washington. In 2004, Barack Obama decided to do something big. He wanted to become a senator for Illinois in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is the capital of the United States, and senators are important people who make laws for the whole country. It was a much bigger job than being a senator in Illinois State. First, he needed to win the election. It was not easy. In the Democratic primary election, many people were running. Obama was not very well known at first, but he worked hard. He talked to many people, gave speeches, and shared his ideas. People liked his message of hope and change. To everyone's surprise, Obama won the primary election by a lot. It was a big victory. Suddenly, people all over the country started to know his name. In July 2004, there was a big meeting for the Democratic Party, called the Democratic National Convention. Obama was invited to give a special speech. It was a very important moment. Millions of people watched him on television. He spoke about his life, his dreams for America, and his belief in unity. His speech was amazing. People were very impressed. After the speech, many people thought he was a rising star in American politics. Some even started to wonder if he could be president one day. After the convention, the election campaign for the Senate seat continued. His opponent was Alan Keyes, a Republican. Keyes was a very different person from Obama. They had different ideas about almost everything. Obama focused on the problems facing ordinary people, like jobs, healthcare, and education. He talked about working together to find solutions. On Election Day in November 2004, people in Illinois went to vote. The result was clear. Barack Obama won with 70% of the vote. It was a huge victory. He won in many different parts of Illinois, even in places where Democrats usually did not win. It was the biggest victory for a Senate candidate in Illinois history. In January 2005, Barack Obama became a United States Senator. He had to move his family from Chicago to Washington, D.C. It was a big change for everyone. Washington, D.C. was a new city, with new people and new challenges. When he arrived in Washington, Obama was the only African-American senator in the Senate at that time. He was also a new face in a place with many experienced politicians. On his first day, the 3rd of January, 2005, he took the oath of office. He promised to do his best for the people of Illinois and for the United States. In the Senate, Obama started to work hard right away. He joined some important committees, like the Foreign Relations Committee, which deals with other countries, and the Environment and Public Works Committee, which works on issues like pollution and nature. He also worked on issues important to veterans, people who had served in the military. One of the first things he did was to work with another senator, Richard Lugar, on a plan to reduce dangerous weapons around the world. It was called the Lugar-Obama Plan. He also worked on a law to make government spending more transparent, so people could see where their money was going. Being a U.S. Senator was very different from being a state senator in Illinois. The issues were bigger, and the decisions were more important. He was now on a national stage, and the whole country was watching him. Barack Obama was ready for this new challenge. He was ready to work hard, to learn, and to make a difference in Washington, D.C. Chapter 10. Dreaming of the White House. Life in Washington was busy for Barack. He was a United States Senator now. Every day was full of meetings, talks, and decisions. He worked hard in the Senate building, with its big white dome shining in the sun. He learned a lot about the country, about the people, and about how things worked in the capital city. People started to notice Barack more and more. He spoke well. He had new ideas. He seemed different from many politicians. When he talked about problems, people listened. When he talked about hope, people felt it too. His speech at the Democratic National Convention in 2004 was still remembered. People would stop him on the street and say, "That speech, it was amazing." Slowly, a new thought began to grow in Barack's mind. It was a big thought, a very big thought. Could he do more? Could he help the country in a bigger way? Could he be president? The idea was exciting and scary at the same time. President of the United States. It was the most important job in the country, maybe in the world. It meant leading millions of people, making huge choices, and carrying a very heavy responsibility. Barack thought about the problems America faced. There was the war in Iraq. Many people thought it was wrong. The country felt divided. People were worried about jobs and money. Healthcare was expensive for many families. He believed he could help to fix these problems. He had ideas. He had energy. He had a different way of seeing things. But being president was not easy. It meant a long, hard campaign. It meant being in the public eye all the time. It meant attacks and criticism. It meant less time for his family. For Michelle and Malia and Sasha. He talked to Michelle about it. They sat at their kitchen table in Chicago when they were home from Washington. Michelle listened carefully as Barack shared his thoughts and dreams. She was always honest with him. She knew how tough a presidential campaign would be. Barack, Michelle said, it will change our lives. It will be very hard for the girls. Are you ready for that? Barack looked at her. He knew she was right. It was not just his decision. It was a family decision. I know it's hard, he said, but I think I can make a difference. I really believe I can help people. And I believe in this country. They talked for a long time. They talked about the good things and the bad things. Michelle was worried, but she also saw the fire in Barack's eyes. She knew he felt strongly about this. She knew he wanted to try. Other people started to ask him too. Friends, colleagues, people he met. Barack, you should run for president, they would say. America needs you. He listened to them. He thought about their words. He thought about his own heart. He thought about the people he had met in Chicago, in Illinois, and across the country. He thought about their hopes and their struggles. He thought about his message. He wanted to talk about hope, hope for a better future. He wanted to talk about change, change for the better. He believed America was ready for change. He believed in hope and change. Slowly, the idea in his mind grew stronger and stronger. It was not just a dream anymore. It was becoming a plan. He started to talk to people who knew about campaigns. He started to think about what he would say, how he would travel, and who would help him. The decision was still big, still scary. But now, it also felt right. It felt like the next step. It felt like what he was meant to do. One cold day in February, Barack stood outside the old state capitol building in Springfield, Illinois. It was the same place where Abraham Lincoln, a very famous president from Illinois, had spoken many years ago. The sky was gray. But Barack felt a warmth inside him. He looked out at the crowd of people who had come to see him. He took a deep breath. And then he said the words that would change his life. And maybe change America too. I am running for president of the United States. The crowd cheered. The campaign had begun. The dream of the White House was now a race to win. Chapter 11. The Long Campaign. Barack had a big idea. To become president of the United States. It was a very big dream. He knew it would be very hard work. He talked to Michelle and his daughters. They talked a lot about it. It would change their lives. But Barack felt he needed to try. He wanted to help more people in America. On a cold day in February 2007, Barack stood in Springfield, Illinois. It was an important place. Abraham Lincoln, a famous president from long ago, had spoken there. Barack told everyone, I am running for president. People cheered. It was the start of a long journey. Barack wanted to talk about important things. He said the war in Iraq needed to end soon. He wanted America to use less oil from other countries. He believed everyone in America should have good health care. These were big problems, and Barack had ideas to fix them. First, he had to win the Democratic Party. Another strong person wanted to be the Democratic president, Hillary Clinton. She was a senator too, and very smart. Barack and Hillary traveled everywhere. They talked to people in every state. It was a race to see who would get more votes. It was a close race. Sometimes Hillary won, sometimes Barack won. But slowly, Barack started to get more people to vote for him. He was good at talking to people. He gave many speeches. He talked about hope and change. People liked this message. They wanted things to be better in America. Barack's team worked very hard. They planned everything carefully. They asked people for small amounts of money. Many people gave a little bit. It was amazing. Barack got money from millions of people. He didn't need to take money from the government for his campaign. This was something new. In June 2008, it was clear. Barack had won the Democratic race. He would be the Democratic person to run for president. Hillary Clinton said she would help him. She told her supporters to vote for Barack. This was very important. Barack needed to choose someone to be his vice president. He chose Joe Biden. Joe Biden was a senator from Delaware. He knew a lot about foreign countries and how the government worked. Barack and Joe would be a good team. In August, the Democratic Party had a big meeting called a convention in Denver, Colorado. Barack spoke to a huge crowd of people in a stadium. He talked about his plans for America. He said, "Yes, we can." The crowd cheered and cheered. It was a very exciting moment. Now, Barack had to run against the Republican person. His name was John McCain. John McCain was also a senator and a war hero. He chose Sarah Palin to be his vice president. It was Barack Obama and Joe Biden against John McCain and Sarah Palin. Barack and John McCain had 3 debates on television. They talked about their ideas for America. Many people watched these debates. They wanted to learn more about each person. Barack traveled all over America. He went to big cities and small towns. He talked to farmers, teachers, and workers. He listened to their problems. He told them he would work hard for them if he became president. Finally, it was the 4th of November, 2008. Election Day. People went to vote all day long. Everyone waited to see who would win. It was a long night. Then the news came. Barack Obama had won. He would be the next president of the United States. It was a historic moment. Barack Obama was the first African American to be elected president. People were so happy and excited. In Chicago, in a big park, thousands of people came to celebrate. Barack came on stage with Michelle and his daughters. He smiled. He said, "Change has come to America." It was the end of a long campaign and the beginning of a new chapter for Barack Obama and for America. Chapter 12. Winning the election. The day was the 4th of November, 2008. It was Election Day in America. For many months, Barack Obama had been working very hard. He wanted to be the President of the United States. He traveled to many places. He talked to many people. He gave many speeches about hope and change. His campaign was against John McCain, a Republican senator. It was a long and tough fight. People were very interested in this election. Many young people got involved. They believed in Obama's message. They wanted something new for their country. On Election Day, people went to vote. They went to schools, churches, and community centers. They waited in lines to put their votes in the boxes. Everyone knew this was a very important day. The future of America was being decided. Obama was in Chicago, his home city. He spent the day with his family. He tried to relax, but it was difficult. He knew millions of people were voting. He knew the results would change his life and maybe the world. As the evening came, the first results started to appear on television. States began to announce who had won. It was a slow process. First, a few states, then more and more. People watched the news very closely. They looked at maps on television that changed color as each state was called for Obama or McCain. In Chicago, At Obama's campaign headquarters, people were nervous but excited. Volunteers and staff who had worked for months were there. They watched the TVs, talked to each other, and waited. The atmosphere was full of tension and hope. Slowly, the numbers started to look good for Obama. He won important states. He won states that usually voted Republican. The feeling in the room began to change from nervous to excited. Could it really happen? Could he actually win? Then the news came. The big television networks announced it. Barack Obama had won enough states. He had more than 270 electoral votes, the number needed to become president. He was going to be the next president of the United States. The room exploded with joy. People cheered. They hugged. They cried. It was a moment of history. Barack Obama was going to be the first African-American president of the United States. This had never happened before. For many years, in America, black people did not have the same rights as white people. Now, a black man was elected to the highest office in the country. It was a huge step for equality and change. Obama came out to speak to the crowd in Grant Park, a big park in Chicago. Hundreds of thousands of people were there. They were cheering and waving flags. The energy was incredible. People had come from all over to celebrate this moment. He walked onto the stage with his wife Michelle and his daughters Malia and Sasha. The crowd roared. It was a sound of happiness and celebration. Obama smiled. He knew this was not just his victory. It was a victory for everyone who believed in change. He began to speak. His voice was calm and strong. He thanked the people who voted for him. He thanked his family and his team. He talked about the long journey they had taken together. He said, "Change has come to America." He spoke about hope again. He said that anything is possible in America. He said that people can overcome challenges if they work together. His words were full of optimism and unity. People in the park listened to every word. Many were crying tears of joy. They felt proud and hopeful for the future. It was a night they would never forget. The news of Obama's victory went around the world very quickly. People everywhere were excited. They saw it as a sign of progress and hope. Leaders from other countries sent congratulations. They looked forward to working with the new American president. Barack Obama's election was more than just a political win. It was a moment that showed the world that change is possible. It was a moment that inspired millions of people to believe in their dreams. It was the start of a new chapter in American history, and for Barack Obama, the beginning of his presidency. Chapter 13. First day as president. The 20th of January, 2009. It was a cold day in Washington, D.C., but the cold air did not stop people from coming. They came in big numbers, filling the streets. They were all waiting to see something very special. It was the day Barack Obama would become the 44th President of the United States. The morning started early. Barack Obama and his family got ready. Michelle, wife, and his two daughters, Malia and Sasha, were with him. They knew this was a very important day for their family and for the country. They went to the Capitol building. This is a big, white building with a dome on top. Many important events happen here. Today, it was the place for the inauguration. This is a ceremony where the new president takes an oath. An oath is a very serious promise. Barack Obama stood on a special platform outside the Capitol. He put his left hand on a Bible. A very important judge, Chief Justice John Roberts, stood in front of him. Judge Roberts said the words of the oath. Barack Obama repeated them. "I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States." These words were simple but very powerful. With these words, Barack Obama became the president. The crowd cheered and clapped. It was a moment of great joy and hope. After the oath, President Obama gave a speech. He spoke about the challenges facing America. He talked about the economy, wars, and the need for change. He said he wanted to bring people together. He spoke about hope and working hard for a better future. His words were strong and inspiring. People listened carefully and felt a new energy in the air. Then it was time to go to the White House. The White House is the home and office of the president. It is a famous building, known all over the world. For Barack Obama and his family, it was their new home. Moving into the White House was a big change. It is a very large place with many rooms and offices, but it also has a feeling of history. Many presidents before him had lived and worked there. President Obama knew he was now part of this history. Even on his first day, President Obama started to work. He knew there were many important things to do. He signed some papers called executive orders and presidential memoranda. These are like instructions for the government. One of the first things he did was about Iraq. He told the military to make plans to bring American soldiers home from Iraq. He wanted to end the war there. This was a promise he made to the American people. He also ordered the closing of Guantanamo Bay Detention Camp. This was a prison in Cuba. It was a place where people were kept who were thought to be terrorists. President Obama wanted to close it because of questions about fairness and justice. President Obama also wanted to make government more open. He decided to reduce the secrecy around presidential records. He wanted people to know more about what the government was doing. Another action he took was about women's health. He changed a policy that stopped money from going to international family planning groups if they talked about abortion. He wanted to support women's health around the world. Very quickly, he also signed his first bill into law. It was called the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. This law helped women to fight for equal pay in their jobs. It made it easier for them to sue if they were paid less than men for the same work. He also signed a law to help more children get health insurance. It was called the Reauthorization of the State Children's Health Insurance Program. This program helped families who did not have much money to get health care for their children. Finally, on his first day, President Obama changed a rule about stem cell research. Stem cells are special cells that can help scientists find cures for diseases. The old rule had limited money for research on embryonic stem cells. President Obama changed this, saying he wanted to support this important research. It was a very busy first day. President Obama started his presidency with energy and action. He wanted to make changes quickly and keep his promises. He knew the job was big and difficult, but he was ready to begin. He was ready to lead America in a new direction. The first day was just the start of a long and important journey. Chapter 14. Healthcare for Everyone. When Barack Obama became president, he thought a lot about people in America. He wanted to help them in many ways. One big thing he wanted to change was healthcare. Healthcare is very important for everyone. When people are sick or hurt, they need to see a doctor. They need medicine to get better. Good healthcare helps people live longer and happier lives. But in America, not everyone could get healthcare easily. It was very expensive. Many people had to pay a lot of money to see a doctor or go to the hospital. Some people did not have health insurance at all. Health insurance is like a card that helps you pay for medical care. Without it, medical bills could be very, very high. Imagine you get sick. You need to go to the doctor, but you don't have insurance. The doctor's visit, tests, and medicine could cost hundreds or even thousands of dollars. This is a big problem for many families. They worry about getting sick because they are afraid they cannot pay for the care. President Obama believed that everyone should have the chance to get good health care, no matter how much money they had. He thought it was not fair that some people could not see a doctor when they needed to. He wanted to make it easier and more affordable for everyone to get health insurance. So, he started to work on a new plan. This plan became known as the Affordable Care Act. Many people also called it Obamacare. It was a very big and important law. Obama worked very hard to get this law passed. It was not easy. Many people in the government had different ideas about health care. There were long debates and discussions. But Obama believed in his plan. He talked to people all over the country about why it was important. He explained that the Affordable Care Act would help millions of people get health insurance. One important part of the law was to help people who did not have insurance because they could not afford it. The government helped them pay for insurance. This made it possible for more people to visit doctors and get the care they needed. Another important part of the law was about insurance companies. Before Obamacare, insurance companies could refuse to give insurance to people who were already sick. This was called having a pre-existing condition. For example, if you had diabetes or cancer, some insurance companies would not sell you insurance. Obama thought this was not right. The new law said insurance companies could not do this anymore. They had to offer insurance to everyone, even people who were already sick. The law also helped young people. Before, when young people finished school and started working, they often lost their health insurance from their parents. Obamacare allowed young people to stay on their parents' insurance plans until they were 26 years old. This helped many young adults who were just starting out in life. Of course, not everyone agreed with Obamacare. Some people thought it was too expensive. Some people did not want the government to be so involved in healthcare. There were many arguments and protests about the law. But President Obama believed that it was the right thing to do. He signed the Affordable Care Act into law in 2010. It was a big moment for him and for the country. After the law was passed, millions of people who did not have health insurance before were able to get it. They could go to the doctor when they were sick without worrying too much about the cost. The number of people without insurance in America went down. Obamacare was a big change in American healthcare. It was one of the most important things President Obama did as president. He wanted to make sure that everyone in America had the chance to be healthy and get the medical care they needed. It was a promise he made, and he worked hard to keep it, to help healthcare be for everyone. Chapter 15. The World Stage. Barack Obama was not just the President of America. He became a leader for the whole world. When he became president, many people in other countries were happy. They saw him as a new kind of American leader. He wanted to change how America talked to other countries. One of the first things President Obama did was to say hello to the world. He wanted to make friends again, especially with countries that were not close to America before. He knew that to solve big problems like war and climate change, countries needed to work together. He started with Russia and Europe. The relationship was not very good after the last president. President Obama wanted to make it better. He sent his vice president and secretary of state to visit these countries. They said it was a new era. They wanted to reset things and start fresh. President Obama also reached out to the Muslim world. He gave his first television interview to a channel in Arabic. Then, he made a video message for the people of Iran for their New Year. He wanted to talk directly to them. Later, he went to Egypt and gave a big speech at Cairo University. He called it a new beginning. He said he wanted a new relationship between the USA and the Muslim world based on respect and understanding. People around the world listened to President Obama. He spoke about peace and cooperation. He believed in talking to other countries, even if they didn't agree on everything. This was a different way of doing things for America. In 2009, something amazing happened. Just months after becoming president, Barack Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize. This is a very important award for people who work for peace. The Nobel Committee said he won because of his extraordinary efforts to strengthen international diplomacy and cooperation between peoples. It was a big surprise to many people, even to President Obama himself. He said he was honored, but also knew there was still much work to do. He saw it as a call to action. One of the big things President Obama promised was to end the war in Iraq. This war had started before he was president and was very unpopular in many countries. He set a plan to bring American soldiers home. By 2010, the last combat soldiers left Iraq. It was a big moment. President Obama said the combat mission was over. President Obama also made history with Cuba. For many years, America and Cuba were enemies. They didn't talk to each other. President Obama decided to change this. He started secret talks with Cuba. In 2014, he announced that America and Cuba would start talking again and become friends. It was a big change after almost 60 years of no contact. He even visited Cuba in 2016, the first American president to go there in a very long time. Despite these challenges, President Obama always tried to work with other countries. He believed in diplomacy and international cooperation. He wanted America to be a leader in the world, but a leader that worked with others, not alone. He left office with a reputation as a president who tried to build bridges and make the world a more peaceful place. Conclusion: a story of hope. Barack Obama's journey is truly amazing. He started as a young boy in Hawaii with a family story that was different from many. He went to school, learned a lot, and decided he wanted to help people. From Chicago to Harvard, he worked hard and believed in himself. His big idea was hope and change, and this idea inspired many people in America and around the world. He became the first African-American president, which was a very important moment in history. As president, he worked on many important things. He made healthcare more available for people with the Affordable Care Act. He helped the economy recover after a difficult time. Even after being president, Obama continues to work to make the world better through his foundation. His story shows us that it doesn't matter where you come from. If you have dreams, work hard, and believe in hope, you can achieve great things. Obama's life is a reminder that change is possible, and everyone can make a difference. His example will continue to inspire people for many years to come.
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.